In DC, sometimes people assume that characters in the modern day don't have all the powers, abilities, or hacks of prior iterations of the multiverse, as many of the characters that existed from there were entirely rebooted upon these major events called crisis events. However, most of these figures have had histories and powers granted back to them by the hacks of Golden Wonder Woman during like the Dark Knight's Death Metal event, which basically undid any form of history loss for the character, granting them anything they had before. However, today we speak of somebody who just survived the first crisis, and has always had these powers, even if we don't consistently see them use them inside the modern day. Today we speak of Green Lantern and the most overpowered hacks that he was throwing down with just in the first several dozen issues of his classic 1960s run. And you are going to be amazed with what this man can consistently do, because it is unhinged. So this is a top 10 list, but keep in mind, this is just like my personal favorites. This isn't like ranked by power or anything along those lines. This is just some of the things I thought were really interesting, especially based on how frequently he utilized the idea or concept that we're referencing here. But before we go any further, guys, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Lumos Theromax, and I'm trying to grow, man. So if you would like to help, man, be sure to share this video, or maybe even become a member down low. That'd be pretty sick, and directly supports my channel, and you get to see this stuff before anybody else. But with no further ado, let's get into it. So, if Green Lantern doesn't have a charge on his ring, he's helpless, right? Like, if he didn't have a charge on his ring and somebody shot a gun at him, he would just die, right? Well, number 10 on our list actually disproves that entire idea, because one of the ring's best features is actually auto protection. Well, what do I mean by auto protection? These rings automatically protect the user even if they're unconscious or if you have no charge left in the ring, as it has a reserve power supply specifically for moments whenever lanterns have no charge on their ring and they're in danger. Mortal danger, of course. Why specify mortal danger? Well, I mean, there is a lot of superpowered individuals out there, and sometimes those individuals are far beyond mortal danger, which is something to consider even with this hacks. But a lot of the basic, I'm out of charge, so basic things are just gonna auto kill me, that just didn't happen in this era, especially against some pretty wild foes. And I know what you guys are thinking. Wait a minute, dude, auto protection? These are what's gonna be on the list? No, don't worry, it gets much spicier, much quicker, okay? Number 9 is matter manipulation. Dude, Green Lantern used to change everything around him. Whether he would just run up on ops and make their guns too big to fire, effectively making their guns worthless, or he could just turn their attacks into dust entirely. Green Lantern constantly changed matter around his suit to suit his needs in combat. And he could also use his power beam to do all sorts of crazy matter manipulation, such as to like create holes in walls or even doorways at times, or even to just phase through them entirely. Unless you think that this hacks is just him vibrating his molecules like the Flash, in which you could grant that as well. But don't worry, we'll get to most of that later. But now we're going to move on to number 8, which is invisibility. Green Lantern spends most of his life with things invisible around him, or invisible himself, because his ring is always invisible while in his alter ego, and his power battery is also always invisible unless he's charging it with his ring. Not to mention, he can make any of his constructs or attacks also be invisible, and he uses that to great success at several times throughout his career. As well as his power battery, he uses it as a weapon since it is invisible to notably overcome villains who can't see invisible objects. Unhinged. Anybody ever remember the time in that animated show where Batman pulls the ring off of Green Lantern and everyone makes a big deal out of it? They're like, oh my god, Batman could have just kicked his butt! And then Green Lantern just pulls it back to himself and he's like, Lamau, you're not doing that again, Chief. One of the things that is number 7 on this list is actually no contact ring control. This is something that is a consistent thing for Green Lantern in this era. Green Lanterns don't need to have their rings on. In fact, Green Lanterns can control their rings up to 100 feet away, and they function the exact same, albeit slightly weaker. Hal constantly uses this to his advantage in combat, even rolling up with one he keeps around invisible, just because he thought he was going to be outmatched by a foe. But where exactly could Hal get another ring from? Don't worry, we're going to come back to that actually. But unfortunately, this next one is one that actually applies to a lot of the individual abilities and hacks we've seen so far, because it's exactly how you apply them that matters. And number 6 is going to be the intellect of Hal Jordan, as this prior version of Hal Jordan was not the idiot that we make him out in the modern day. Sometimes I wonder if Hal Jordan kind of had a Goku reversion in terms of his intellect because of exactly how extreme he was in these earlier runs of Green Lantern, because he used his knowledge of science and engineering to solve a lot of his problems, and these are all things that eventually wound up going to other characters in the mythos to kind of formulate them as unique characters into themselves, such as John Stewart. Take, for example, this fight, where Hal Jordan demonstrates a vast knowledge of chemical compounds and chemical reactions that can weaponize that knowledge via his power set, creating a small chemical laboratory in one panel. He then hurls those chemicals together, creating a new concoction, and throws it on a creature where his powers don't work on at all. These chemicals dissolve the entire creature alive, and it just ends the battle. And there are countless examples of him using his extreme intellect to overcome foes that were just completely immune to his abilities, because there was a lot of yellow villains in this era for reasons. Take, for example, this alien that turned itself into a yellow topaz ring, and Hal wound up using a series of invisible constructs to bore a pipe down into the center of the earth to draw out the heat required to heat up the topaz, changing its color away from yellow so he could, like, fuck it up. There's just some unbelievable moments with his intelligence. I can't stress this enough. The only reason this isn't higher on the list is because this simply applies to pretty much all the abilities that are kind of on here. So I wanted to get it somewhere around here. So kind of also related to the last one and a bunch of these others, which is why it landed in the middle here, Hal in this era has ways to amplify his powers to fight foes well beyond his weight class, which does kind of roll with a lot of these crazy hacks that we're seeing here. Take, for example, where he fights Krona. A defeated Alan Scott's mind is roaming around because he was already defeated by Krona. And Hal's just like, okay, I'll just absorb your mind into my ring, and we'll have double the mind, like double the willpower to fight against Krona. So we're basically like two lanterns. We just fused and amped ourselves like we're in Dragon Ball Z. Like, how does that even make sense? But he just does it, and he does stuff like this constantly in this era, fighting dudes that he should just not win against, or just well beyond anything he should be capable of fighting. Like Krona here, because this dude's just unhinged every time he rolls up. In the modern day of DC, creating a Green Lantern ring is seen as pretty freaking crazy, as everybody thought inside Green Lantern Rebirth, but unfortunately, as we're going to find out what number 4 is, ring duplication is something that Hal has been doing for a long time to a large level of success. Remember when I said earlier that Hal showed up with a second ring to a fight that he had? Where exactly did he get it? Well, he just forged it from the scraps of one he had blown up in a prior story. He just flew back to that world to kind of found the scraps and just turned it into one, like, who would have thought? And don't worry, if creating a ring from scraps is something you see as not legitimate, well, that's not hard work for him, as one time Hal pretended to act crazy to fit in with his evildoer's plans and sold a bunch of Green Lantern rings he had made to random civilians, but it turns out he knew that this villain was siphoning his ring, so he actually sold the rings to get rings on other people's hands so he could siphon their willpowers, amp himself, and have an army to help fight with him. He constantly uses stuff like this to protect himself in this era, and it always seems crazy at first, but it always comes back as some sort of master plan from Green Lantern, man. His ring duplication is really, it's not just random either, it's always intelligent, man. It's crazy that he could just do this stuff like left and right in this era. Now, it's actually the Flash who's known for investigating pretty much most of the multiverse, but one thing I think that people have just entirely forgotten whenever it comes to like multiversal shenanigans and stuff is that it was the Green Lanterns who fought a ton of multiversal stuff back in the day. As a matter of fact, most aliens just in general have technology that allows them access into the multiverse or into really negative places in higher dimensions, and Green Lanterns are constantly summoned to deal with threats like that. And so obviously they would need ways to be able to get out of trapped dimensions, foreign dimensions, or even other places. So number 3 on our list is actually multiversal travel. And Green Lantern could create portals to foreign dimensions outside of our home universe to investigate criminals, which included places entirely opposite to like our universe and nature, such as the antimatter universe, which is an entirely separate existence from ours that scales equivocal or even larger in scope. And whenever I say that, I mean like the entire positive matter multiverse, so everything on the map of the multiverse, short of the overvoid. So like that's just crazy. And he also can alter himself to fit these foreign dimensions. For example, he converts all of the matter in his body to negative so he doesn't die or explode, because positive matter and negative matter touching obviously makes him explode. So they can change, they have a level of homeostasis to maintain themselves even in these foreign dimensions. And if just moving to like higher dimensions or other dimensions inside creation is something you think that's only in his kid, well, much like the Flash, he can vibrate to parallel Earths, such as he did here whenever he vibrated to Earth 2. And you think, oh, so he just like vibrated to Earth 2 because he wanted to. No, he can actually like create portals to just go to Earth 2 if he wants. But no, here he specifically vibrated because he was dodging an attack that was stated to be able to kill him anywhere in the universe. So he just vibrated somewhere else in the multiverse to avoid attacks. He can also move throughout all of time whenever it comes to his ring, just allowing him to travel entire centuries in the blink of an eye via like either ring hacks or speed alone. No matter how you look at it, Hal was a very powerful traveler in this area, and it was really hard to trap him in any specific location that he couldn't use his abilities of multiversal travel to get a roundabout way out. So this one might be the memeiest one on the list, but seriously guys, like I mean this one from the bottom of my soul. In the modern day, Hal Jordan is seen as like an absolute baller, and Carol Ferris is madly in love with him, but he's too busy saving the universe to like have a relationship. Until recently, whenever they both kind of put their differences aside and just said, we're gonna be a couple now, and they have made it official finally. Well, in this era, things were very different. Hal had zero game with Carol Ferris, okay? And that's why it's number 2 on this list. Hal was closer to his simp than a total baller whenever it came to her, and he spends a ton of time fanning the flames of this doomed relationship with Carol Ferris, except for there's one major problem. She doesn't love Hal Jordan. In fact, she only loves Green Lantern. Now, don't get me wrong, Hal can still get any chick in this or any universe or higher dimension, as clearly seen throughout his entire history of side chicks. But Hal only has real eyes for Carol. He pushes all the other women to the side. Until she gets engaged to some guy randomly and it destroys Hal's entire life and he spends forever like being a moody dude over it. Yeah, Hal Jordan was a really different guy in this era. So what could beat that out as number 1 on the list? And I know what you're thinking, man. What could it possibly be? Well, it's already actually in the thumbnail, alright? Because I'm an honest guy and I always put the honest things where they are. Number 1 is mind hacks. This man, Green Lantern Hal Jordan, might as well be a Marvel telepath with how unhinged his use of telepathy is inside this era. He is constantly reading people's minds without them knowing, or wiping people's minds of things he doesn't want them to know. Like this one time he was in prison and sent a mental projection to read a mind of a bunch of people and forcibly convince this guy, once he found him, to admit that he's guilty to clear his name, all while he was in jail, man. Or this one time his identity gets revealed and he just puts mental blocks in people's brains to keep them from knowing. Or he just wipes their mind entirely to be sure. Absolutely unhinged whenever it comes to Hal Jordan. And this is something he is always using. Like he'd be like, oh yeah, I forgot to mind read that guy. And then he just reads that guy's mind. Like, even if they're not even in the same city as him anymore. Or he scans like an entire planet. Like, his mind reading is just crazy in this era. This man would have put Martian Manhunter out of a job. That should give you an idea of how unhinged his mind hacks were in this era. Well, it looks like we finally came to the end of the video, and my god, you guys are trying to make me make these 20-minute videos. They're killing me, but this is what you all voted for on the community page, so this is exactly what you guys are getting. And I'm gonna try and do that a little bit more, where I listen to you all and the old Theromax Corps members. So be sure to like and subscribe to see all my community posts, or become a member like all those members and get early access to all my content, and even time to sit back and chat with me if you really want. So consider all those things, guys, and trust me, I only have more dope content on the way. And sorry things have been slow, but I also have a full-time job and life outside of this, so just saying, man, it takes me a little bit to make some content, but when I do, it's always spicy. That being said, guys, we'll catch you next time for the next video, and trust me, I've got a banger rolling out.
You'll join my list of dead after I tear you in half. And I laughed at the thought of them controlling me. I'm the ultimate dragon that spawned everything. I resist and defy.